Welcome everyone to LuchaWorld Podcast episode number 129. Fredo Esparza here, and this week we will be remembering Brazo de Plata, also known as Super Porky. We'll be talking about Sansón Cuatrero Forastero leaving CMLL. We will be recapping Triplemania XXIX, and we will be talking about some of the latest news from CMLL, including the announcement of their upcoming 88th anniversary show, which will once again feature fan voting for five title matches. And already there's been a slight change and some controversy concerning one of those matches. So we will be talking about all that and a whole lot more. Not really, just pretty much those four topics. It's really right now. Actually, this is a lot of news because the Triplemania on its own is probably going to be a lot to talk about. Just a lot went on that show. But there was a lot that happened. And really, one of the things that I still notice with Lucha Libre is that we get a lot of shows announced. And then suddenly a couple of them get canceled or postponed because obviously they have to take care of what is going on with the pandemic as far as how many people or if people should be attending shows based on the COVID cases in the different areas or regions in Mexico. Same thing is happening here in the United States, where here in Los Angeles County, they've pretty much reinstated the mask mandate for people to wear them indoors once again. And actually, I think they've even added more, like you have to show that you're vaccinated or been tested, show a negative result on a test in order to attend a big event or at a large venue. I don't know. They're constantly changing it. I think this is going to go on for at least another year, maybe two, just because people aren't really. We still don't have a lot of people that are getting vaccinated, and then a lot of the people that aren't getting vaccinated, they have different reasons why they're not doing it. Some of them, they'll tell you that it's because they don't know enough, or there's constantly different news that they hear about the vaccine. But honestly, I got vaccinated. It didn't hurt. It was very easy to do. I didn't get sick. Maybe you feel a little bit under the weather for 24 hours after you get back from the time you get vaccinated to the next day. But other than that, I was fine. If you're still still not considering getting vaccinated, I really recommend that you just do it. I mean, protect yourself, protect your family, your friends, everyone. That's what matters the most right now. And I know a lot of people make it a political thing, but honestly, at some point, I think everybody's either going to get vaccinated, and if you're not vaccinated, you're going to run the risk of constantly having to deal with, getting tested, which in some cases costs money, and you're going to have to like conform to certain things. So, like I said, just get tested. Or get vaccinated. It's not that big of a deal. And it's actually hit a lot of Lucha Libre with a lot of luchadors passing away from it. Many of the luchadors that passed away from it were, slightly not 100% healthy. Even though they were actively wrestling, some of them, they weren't the most, they weren't the most healthy looking people. But this is something that can affect anyone. And if you have a health issue, it's something that's going to affect you. And obviously it's happened to a lot of the luchadors. We've seen several of them, Ovet, Angelo Demonio, a couple of other wrestlers that have passed away from different ages too, like a lot of older luchadors, and a lot of the guys who are middle-aged sort of. So that's I mean, to me it's just like it just makes sense just to get vaccinated, just to get over this whole pandemic thing and get to some sort of normalcy. Right now, I see a lot of people that are starting to travel, attend wrestling shows. I still don't feel at that point where I'm comfortable going to wrestling shows. I have gone to restaurants, and I have gone to a couple of places, like bars that I frequented in the past, but mostly because I already know a lot of the people that are there. And for the most part, I try not to go when there's a lot of people. So like I won't go to a bar on a weekend. I'll maybe go on a Wednesday late in the evening. So maybe instead of running the risk of being around a lot of people on a weekend, on a Wednesday, you're basically just hanging out with a couple of people that you know. Maybe like the few times I've been there, at a bar on a Wednesday. I think there's been less than 20 people, even fewer. Before the pandemic, I once went to this to one of the local bars I hang out at, and there was like maybe 6 people: my brother-in-law, myself, and the bartender, and 3 other guys. That was basically it, and it was very so that's the sort of thing. Like I know there's Cauliflower Alley Club coming up in September. PWG is running shows again, but honestly, I don't know if I want to be in that type of atmosphere where there's so many people in a smaller venue, and it's like it kind of just feels a little bit I don't think it's worth it right now. I'd rather just wait. Honestly, it's not that big of a deal. So, getting to the news right now. Brazo de Plata, also known as Super Porky, who was a huge star in Lucha Libre, passed away on July 26th from a heart attack. This was probably one of I mean, he was a huge star for many of us who watched. I mean, a lot of us who are if you're listening to this show, you probably had a chance to watch him, unless you're really, really new to pro wrestling, to Lucha Libre within the last 3 or 4 years. But if you've been around the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years, you've seen, you've heard, you've enjoyed watching Super Porky. Maybe some of you who got in a little later didn't really enjoy it as much just because he was more of a comedy wrestler. But even his comedy was always funny. I think at towards the end, it kind of like it was kind of like they would put him in with, like, let's say like he would be in a trios match and it would be him, Máscara Dorada and La Sombra versus like Guerreros Laguneros or something like that, or Guerreros del Infierno, or some really good trio that can go. And they usually had to slow it down just because he was there. But for the most part, he was a comedy wrestler. By late in his career is basically that's all he was. But if you were like me and you're much more older, you remember him as part of the Brazos trio, even when they were masked, and they were an awesome trio, a great probably I would say top. I think I had him placed second or second or third in the greatest trios of all time. They were just a fantastic trio. Could work. They can brawl. They could mat wrestle. They could, Super Porky Brazo de Plata could do cartwheels in the match. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people didn't. If you didn't get to see him early in his career, you didn't realize how athletic he was for a big guy. And he wasn't a big, tall guy. He was short, really short, like I think 5'6" or so, but he was hefty, but he could move. He was very athletic. That kind of, as he started to gain more and more weight as he got older, that started to slow him down, and he wasn't doing that much of that. But he was still, when he was younger, wow, he was awesome. Really, that trio, along with Los Misioneros de la Muerte, Los Infernales, and EMLL, and really those were really the trios that kind of elevated trios wrestling in Lucha Libre during the trios boom in the 1980s. From there, I mean, Brazos, when they dropped their mask to the Villanos, another great trio from that era. And one of the funny things is that trio really consisted of 5 different brothers, and I think one of them passed away at a younger age, and so it was really the 4 of them. And then people always used to put Villano 3 in that big mask match, but he wasn't actually in that match. It was, I think, Villano 1, 4, and 5. And that was a huge match that also had some controversy just because the Brazos claimed that they weren't paid by the promoters, and it actually took years for them to get their money. Some kind of questioned whether or not they got the entirety of what they were owed for their masks. But that was actually one of the bigger matches in Lucha Libre history, just because it was, two trios that feuded for so many years, as far as a family, and then they continued on afterwards. But, these are guys that knew each other from, childhood. And when they started wrestling, they kind of started wrestling and getting into the wrestling business at about the same time. So they, you got to see that they actually worked against each other when they were climbing up the cards for UWA. So that was actually one of the that was actually one of the bigger rivalries, and you really see what became of like Villano Tercero, who came out of that huge rivalry. And even though he wasn't part of that mass match, he was such a big star by that point that he was able to take that into the next decade on to the 2000s, where it was that big mass match with Atlantis. While with the Brazos, they were still so huge that when they dropped their mask, in many ways, I think that made them a more entertaining trio, gave them a new look. They went from being like a really good brawling trio to being still a very good brawling trio, but also they used a lot of you could see their faces, so they used a lot of their facial expressions, and that's really where Super Porky became such a huge star. Really, how many times would you watch the Brazos, and the first thing they would do was they would have a match, and Super Porky would start crying, or he would get upset from something he would do in the match, and his two brothers would kind of scold him. Brazo de Oro was being the oldest and the leader of the trio, would constantly be very rough with him, maybe slap him a few times and make him cry, and that kind of endeared him with the fans, and that made him into an even bigger star, to the point where CMLL in the 90s kind of thought of him as becoming, a single superstar on his own, and he pretty much became a big star. I would say maybe not at the level of of a El Santo or somebody like that, but pretty much in that next tier of superstars, a guy who is just so charismatic that you fans just love to see him wrestle and love to see him be on shows. And that continued on, not just from his time with CML, but later on in AAA, his appearance in WWE television, which was really just him eating, I think it was ham, sitting in skits when they were doing the I think it was the junior division, and it was just one of those. He just had a really wonderful career, and he's going to be remembered for a long time. And the sad thing about the Brazos is that all three brothers, the ones that made the Brazos trio, and there actually is a fourth brother that passed away, also the one that wrestled as Robin Hood. But you had the three members of the original Brazos trio that passed away. They've all passed away, and it's kind of sad that we don't have them around. But they have so many family members that are still around. And it was kind of interesting that as we were seeing AAA build up to an eventual big main event for Triplemania, being Psycho Clown versus Rey Scorpion, and of course Psycho Clown being the son of Super Porky. That the passing happening at a time when not only was Psycho Clown the son of Super Porky, but then you have him going up against Rey Scorpion, who was really one of the last big rivals of Super Porky in his career. They had this really surprisingly entertaining match in CMLL, where it was basically like a hair match, but it was a super libre, kind of like with MMA. I think it was they call it Vale Todo, MMA type of match, and Rey Scorpion just beat the crap out of him. And the plan was for Rey Scorpion and Maximo to have their to set up the revenge big match in CMLL, but Rey Scorpion ended up leaving, and then you basically have Rey Scorpion becoming a huge he was already becoming a pretty big star in CMLL, but he became such a much bigger star as an independent. And then I think he went back briefly to CMLL and then went back to AAA and became an even a far bigger, probably one of the best heels in Lucha Libre right now. I kind of wish he would get more interest as far as fans kind of like getting a little bit more behind him as being a great Rudo, but I kind of think I think he's great, but in the fans' eyes, he's not necessarily that next top tier Rudo, where like a Roosh that's and that Roosh is technically I consider him a Rudo, but like a type of guy that is considered an elite level guy, and Rey Scorpion has that capability of being that type of wrestler. Unfortunately, I think he kind of there's a certain point where, because AAA uses they have Psycho Clown as the lead babyface, but then they have a lot of guys who come in as foreign stars like Kenny Omega and or the big ex-WW guys that come in, Andrade, Alberto El Patron previously, Rey Mysterio, that it kind of makes it difficult for somebody like Rey Scorpion to reach that next level of being a huge star. Not too much in the guys who were there in the past, like Dr. Wagner Jr. and LA Park. Whenever Roosh comes in, another guy that I think you would group in with those guys that are guys that they would bring in just for one appearance, and kind of that would overshadow somebody like Rey Scorpion, who's pretty much a AAA guy. It happens all the time. But yeah, Super Porky, such a charismatic character and such a fun person. So many people talk about how great of a guy he was, and you see that in his interviews whenever he would talk, and he would be so enthusiastic. Even after he retired, he still had hopes of coming back to wrestle. He was pretty much shot by that point, but a lot of wrestlers just have a hard time quitting. So I think for the most part, he was planning. He was kind of hopeful to come back. I'm glad he was able to get a little bit of a. I don't know. I don't know. I kind of feel that he had some big moments in Lucha Libre that maybe. From what I heard, from what Psycho Clown said, he didn't die an angry, bitter wrestler. He was still a very happy person, and I think that's very important. That was good. He died at a young age. I mean, honestly, but one of the things that I think, as if you've been a long time Lucha Libre fan, you realize that he's had a couple of health scares in the past. I think going back to the mid-90s, suffering heart attacks. So he may have lasted a little, despite being, I think, late 50s. He might have lasted a lot longer than I think a lot of us thought he would last. I wish he would have lasted a little longer, just because I think having somebody like that who is so enthusiastic about Lucha Libre, it's always fun to have somebody like that. He wasn't one of these old wrestlers who was bitter. That was one of the other things I really liked about him. He wasn't totally, completely gone. I think the one thing, there's a big difference with older wrestlers when they're talking about how their era was great. Everybody does that. We all do it with music, entertainment, sports. We always talk about, when we were younger, this was even better. When we were younger, we all do it. But you also have to have that. A lot of us have that ability to reflect on the fact that maybe not everything nowadays is horrible. I mean, and I think Super Porky was that type of former wrestler that kind of understood that, even though it's not like it used to be, there's still some positives in Lucha Libre, and I think I think there needs to be more legends like that. I'm glad Blue Panther's still around, just because he's still not completely bitter about wrestling, and whenever he gets interviewed, he really talks about how he kind of feels that it just, wrestling just evolves, and he doesn't totally trash it like other guys like Pirata Morgan and Kanek and other guys like that. I hope people remember Super Porky for being not just a charismatic comedic wrestler, but also for being a very good wrestler, because he was good. Definitely one of the all-time great luchadors in Mexico, wrestlers in Mexico. One of the all-time greats. He'll be missed.
Como le digo a mis compañeros y a mis amigos, más a los enmascarados, hasta la vista, babies. Ush, recuérdame, come frutas y verduras, que la sombra de Super Porky los cubra y los proteja. Ush.
The big news prior to Triplemania came from CMLL when they sent out a press statement that Tuesday prior to Triplemania, announcing that Sansón, Cuatrero, and Forastero, the trio known as Nueva Generación Dinamita, or NGD for short, had parted ways with the promotion. They wished them well and basically also announced that the Mexican National Trios titles and the CMLL World Middleweight title were vacant now, because those were titles held by NGD. Cuatrero held the middleweight title. So they were announced as being gone, which was a huge shock to everyone, just because these are guys who are in their 20s, leaving CMLL, guys who you really should be building the promotion around. But for the most part, if you look at what the track record of recent departures from CMLL, this is around the age range of guys that have left CMLL to look elsewhere. With La Sombra, when he left to go to WWE and became Andrade, Máscara Dorada, Rush, Dragon Lee. The list goes on and on of guys who have left the promotion, and I think there's going to be more guys that are going to leave as the weeks and months go on, just because I don't think this is even some of the undercard guys like Super Astro Jr. who left. They're kind of seeing that there's more options out there. They're looking for opportunities. if they're undercard guys, they're more or less looking for opportunities, whereas the main event level guys pretty much know they're going to get a big spot elsewhere, be it AAA or on independent shows, and then we're getting work internationally. One of the problems with what came down with NGD and CMLL, really it came down to the fact that NGD kind of held they posted a video, I think the day after, or a day or two afterwards, where they thanked CMLL for the opportunities, and then they kind of said that they wanted to expand their horizons and wrestle in other places throughout Mexico. They basically only said that, but they're probably going to end up working a little bit more internationally as well, just because that's one of the drawbacks with being in CML, is that they've kind of closed themselves out of every other promotion. They've kind of just, they're doing their own thing, and other than that relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling, they don't really keep a long-term relationships with other promotions. The Ring of Honor one didn't really last that long. Hopefully I don't know. I think that's the only hope that they could bring that back, just because it's another option for those guys in CML that, maybe they don't get work that frequently, but the fact that every once in a while, promotions like New Japan and Ring of Honor, they kind of want to do something that's more geared towards Latinos. They'll always want to use more talent, and having that option of bringing in CMLL guys, it would always help, especially with New Japan with the Fantastica Mania. Losing that, it's really been, I think CML's been hit really hard by the pandemic, just because there's not as much work for these guys outside of CMLL, and even within CMLL, they have one left. For a stretch of time, they weren't getting it was basically just the Friday shows. Now they've kind of expanded it to where it's now the Tuesday, Friday, Sunday in Arena Mexico shows, and then they have Puebla's back and Guadalajara, and really there's only two shows missing, the Arena Coliseo Saturday show, and then the Guadalajara Sunday show. I don't know if those are ever going to come back. The Guadalajara one seems more likely to happen, but that was more with local talent than anything else. Every once in a while, they would bring in. I think with Satanico being a part of that group right now, they were bringing in a few more of the main roster guys. Not all of them, but maybe like one or two, or a handful of guys just to fill out just to have a bigger main event on a Sunday show. But even like them getting work on the independents, they weren't getting anything. If you look at I think Cubs fan posted on Lucha Blog, where he noticed that Ultimo Guerrero, Nitro, and Lluvia had gotten something like 20 plus bookings outside of CMLL, whereas Sansón, Cuatrero, and Forastero had only gotten one. And that right there alone kind of tells you that there's a big disparity. There's been other people that kind of seem like they've left CMLL. Estrellita hasn't been there, and she's been working more with the Robles group. There's been others that kind of have been MIA. Fuego, who's I'm assuming Fuego's more or less working in his home region as far as a real job, just because he hasn't been back, and there's been a handful of other guys that haven't really been back. You're starting to see some guys like Halcon Suriano Jr. kind of has made his way back to be on more shows in CMLL, but still there's still not as much work for these guys available as far as what other guys like the independent guys are able to get. And even then, I mean, there's not as much. You're starting to see a lot of the main stars in Mexico kind of like trying to get bookings in the United States. So it's starting to open up a little more. Unfortunately, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, so I don't know how long this is gonna last. And the fact that it's still going on, I think a lot of like the younger guys or a lot of the CML guys are probably seeing that the likelihood of Fantastica Mania happening next year seems very unlikely, and then this Ring of Honor relationship ending so abruptly, it kind of feels like it's kind of time. It's kind of, it makes more sense to leave, just because there's no other alternative besides being in CMLL for that long and not having the option of going. And that's one of the other things. These guys, the option of going elsewhere, it isn't just about them wrestling, but them being able to sell their merchandise, and the fact that they're not able to go to Japan or the United States, it makes it a little harder for them to make money or make far more money than they do within CMLL. It doesn't help that the fact that CML, every little slight is kind of like so difficult. Even it's weird because even like guys who left AAA, if they get booked with CMLL guys, that first time that they're there, they have to change the match or whatever, or they have to like the promoter pretty much has to like either decide not to use the CMLL talent or use the one or not use the guy that can't is who left AAA, has been gone from AAA for at least months, and but because CMLL doesn't keep up with this stuff, the office doesn't keep up with this stuff, it makes it impossible to like come up with a proper way of like using CMLL talent. So NGD leaves. That leaves a huge hole in CMLL. You know, for whatever reason, just because there's a lot of people who don't understand. I think they were very repetitive in their matches the last 2 years, which was unfortunate just because they're young guys, and you would think they would be like the guys who would want to improve the quality of the matches and kind of like raise the level of what was happening in CMLL. But that kind of also shows you the state of CMLL, where, you know, nobody really seems to be able to do that. I mean, unless you're self-motivated, it's very difficult for these guys to kind of like elevate other people or themselves. And it kind of became this really, it's become a very boring product for the most part. On occasion, you'll get a good show, but NGD, the fact that they left, I think hopefully this leads to them kind of just, you know, resurrecting their careers, because, you know, for about a 2-3 year stretch, they were actually really good, and they were getting pushed and working with Angel de Oro, Niebla Roja, and Sobrano Jr. They were kind of like coming up with some really creative stuff. Hopefully that happens again. They're going to get to split their time with AAA, the Crash, like I said, and possibly MLW with the Azteca Underground stuff that they're doing now. So independent wrestling as well. So maybe they'll get a little bit more we'll get to see a little bit more of a good version of the NGD than what we were getting from CMLL. And, you know, it's funny because people are like, oh, now suddenly Fredo's and all these other people are going to say that NGD is good. It's not that they weren't good. It's that they were wrestling repetitive matches. Unless you guys really, really like watching repetitive matches every single week, watching the same match over and over again, and are perfectly happy with that, that's on you. That's perfectly fine. You enjoy that. I don't enjoy watching the same match over and over again. I like to see some stuff that looks at least a little bit different. I mean, it could be the same match, you know, once every couple of months, that's fine. But like if they're doing that every single week or every other week, it just gets very repetitive and very boring. And I for one, I think that's the one thing that always like helps CMLL, is that whenever they don't really change unless it's done outside of their control. So like NGD leaving kind of forced them to like scatter and come up with different matchups. You know, the whole situation with the Mexican national heavyweight title has kind of leads them to do something else. But it's not necessarily a good thing, because you can't afford to lose guys who are in their 20s that easily. I mean, there's no real replacement for NGD right now within CMLL. If you look at CMLL, a lot of the newer talent they've been bringing in has been a lot of smaller guys, and they've been more lightweights, and they've been more technicos. So we're not really seeing a lot of great heels coming in. There's not a lot of great rudos right now in CMLL that are, you know, it's really like if you were looking at the young rudos, NGD and Carvenario were really like the main guys who everybody talked about. Templario was the other one. I mean, when Templario came in, I think he blew everything up just because he was so much better than everybody else and so different. And now, you know, you lose NGD and suddenly it's pretty much Carvenario, Templario, maybe like a handful of other guys, but they got to figure out what they could do to improve the roster, maybe switch some guys over. And I don't mean turning them relevos increíbles. They've been doing this bullshit relevos increíbles stuff nonstop, to the point where now, like, I think they're going to kill the whole fantasy of the rudos versus technicos thing, much like it's happened in the United States, where, you know, the fans don't necessarily cheer the people that the promotions want you to cheer. They don't cheer like the babyface. They'll cheer like the bad guy. For a long stretch of time that happened, but In Mexico, you still had a big difference. You could do it every so often when you have one guy who's doing that. But when you have like an entire show where it's relevos increíbles, 2, 3 matches that are relevos increíbles, it kind of gets a little bit too repetitive. I hope they kind of at least make a change or something. But, it's CMLL. I don't see it happening anytime soon, especially with the guys in charge right now. I think it would require somebody else coming in and just, not necessarily like, I think when people say that CMLL should change, they think you're going to want them to change, like do it to complete turn around and become AAA. I'm not saying they should become AAA or become WWE or something like that. I'm talking there's little things they could do where they could actually just improve the roster, elevate talent that deserves to be elevated. Right now, they kind of have the Cancerberos who, like, for so long were never properly utilized, and now they're probably used a little bit. Like they're being like their place. If you're going to use them as a semi-main event or the fourth match, that's perfectly fine. But if you're going to use them, or even like a main event, like in Puebla or on a Tuesday show, that's fine. But like when you're on a Friday show, that's a little bit more difficult. Although I think as a trio, I think you get away with it, because you have Virus and the fact that it's a trio. But I mean, these guys are so much older than everybody else now. That's a problem. Honestly, it's the age thing. There's so many old wrestlers in CMLL and not enough. And they're just letting the younger guys go when they should really be focusing on developing the younger talent to carry on the promotion, as opposed to just letting them go and be some of the it's not like these guys when they leave become huge stars internationally. It's because obviously the timing of there being a pandemic, it's not helping, but these guys at least are getting more of a recognition. I mean, there is a huge difference to how people talk about someone like Aramis or Ares or some of the guys who didn't even really, they went to AAA, but they were already starting to work independently as well, and then went to the US before they became before they kind of became bigger names in AAA. They're kind of regarded in a different way. When you look at CMLL, you very rarely get a lot of talk about the CMLL guys, and I think that's something that they really have to figure out how to change that perception. Not just because it helps their wrestlers get better bookings internationally, but also because it also helps the promotion. The fact that they kind of shut themselves out of all these promotions really hurts them, and it's going to hurt their talent. And now you see like NGD leaving. Then you have Soberano Jr. kind of talking about how he places all the blame on Ultimo Guerrero and other people behind the scenes that are kind of causing the issues. And that's the sort of thing you really have to get away from. You really have to find a way to kind of have a middle ground between all that, because you can't really afford to lose Soberano Jr. too on the heels of NGD. That would be such a huge blow. He's not wrestling right now because he's injured, but losing him would be such a big blow, besides already having lost Dragon Lee. And that's the other thing. When they let Dragon Lee go, he didn't want to leave. That was the craziest thing. That I still think that might be the wildest thing, just because he was booked on a show in the US that also featured AAA talent. I'm pretty sure they could have let it be known to PWG or whoever was in charge that Dragon Lee could not work with the AAA guy. They had so much talent on that show that I think they would have been fine with it. The fact that became such a big deal, and even then, I mean, the guys they bring in, it's not like they're bringing in Psycho Clown or La Parca back when he was alive. That type of wrestler that is so synonymous with AAA that it becomes a big thing. Even in coverage in Mexico, I don't think it doesn't mean as much as it used to. Like, honestly, I think there's a big difference when you're looking at the 90s and the CML AAA battle at that time period. Nowadays, it's very different. Both promotions have completely different philosophies of what they want to be. CML is more of a local promotion, tourist attraction within Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Puebla, whereas AAA is trying to be a worldwide promotion that has had a lot of bumps on the road where they haven't really been able to achieve that full level of being the big promotion internationally, joining WWE, New Japan, AEW, all those other promotions. They're having such a hard time reaching that next level of being that super, being brought up with those promotions. I don't know. I just think at this point in time, CML just really needs to come to terms rather than using this whole mentality of like trashing everybody that is thinking everybody is against you when they're not. I mean, for the most part, everybody that watches Lucha and reports on it, we're all Lucha fans. We all want CMLL, AAA, the independent promotions. We all want them to succeed. We want them to do well. The problem is these promoters, they always somehow screw it up. They always do something wrong. We see it, and you know, I think AAA kind of at least realizes that they probably it's better just to stay quiet, not talk about it. They have not mentioned anything about the lawsuit. They've not said anything that, you know, there's a lot of stuff you could talk about in trashing AAA, but they've kind of gone the route of not saying anything. CMLL used to be like that when Paco Alonso was around, but now that he's not around, it kind of feels like it's the people that are underneath the Luderoff family, like Julio Cesar Rivera and all the wrestlers that are very pro CMLL as far as their thinking. It's them kind of like trying to trash everybody else, when in reality, I mean, you got to be open and honest, and there is no positive when you lose Nueva Generación Dinamita that easily. 3 guys who were key members of your promotion who you should have been building around. I think for the most part, I think a lot of us thought that the next 4 or 5 years, we're going to probably see Atlantis Jr. Kind of going up against Nueva Generación Dinamita, a build up to a mass match eventually with one of them against Atlantis Jr. And now that's not going to happen. So who knows how far how that's going to work out. We could always get that later on, you know, in 10 years. For whatever reason, all these guys who cover Lucha and are pro CMLL, they forget some of their favorite moments in CMLL history came from guys who came and went, who may have started in CMLL, left CMLL, came back to CMLL, and then had that big match, that big moment. It wasn't just like these guys, it's not this straight line of a career where it's just like, oh, they stay in one promotion. No, these guys, you know, for the most part, there's a lot of ups and downs as far as like leaving promotions, or like even their careers, like having peaks and valleys. I don't know. It's just weird to listen to these people like kind of like trash other people's opinions. I think that's what bothered me most about the whole covering CMLL with all the talent leaving. It's that these guys don't realize that that's actually bad. I mean, could you imagine? I would much rather have a promotion that has Nueva Generación Dinamita, Super Astro Jr., Dragon Lee, Roosh, than have a promotion that has Dark Magic, Mysterioso Jr., Okumura, an undercard where the lower tier guys are suddenly now possibly getting a shot at titles because there's nobody else in the promotion, and fans feel that they deserve an opportunity. Some of them rightfully so, others really, you know, they weren't very good to begin with, and suddenly they have a shot at being on an anniversary show just because the promotion is so thin on talent. I don't know. I think, and you know, even like now with the talent that's left, I think there's ways where CML can kind of like at least take a step back and kind of like just figure out what they could do to fix the promotion. One of the things I really think they need to do is like at least get Hechicero to start working more frequently. I think that's the one thing that all of us have been talking about, just because I think he's one of the few guys as far as heels in the promotion that kind of can change the way guys work. An entire card can change just because they all know Hechicero is going to bring in his A game, and I think that really changes it. And then there's so many other guys, so many other matchups that you could come up with that can be creative, that you could actually like pull off, that might add a little bit more to the promotion while you're kind of in a bit of a scramble mode right now with talent leaving. I think the most interesting thing going on right now in CMLL is happening in Guadalajara. They're coming up with some creative matchups, not only the main events, but the fact that they're bringing in guys from other regions. They were bringing in the guys from Querétaro, and then recently they're bringing in guys from Matamoros. I think they're guys that work for the Gemelos Diablos families promotion. So we're seeing some of those guys. I mean, just the fact that they're bringing in new blood and just seeing like guys, maybe somebody sticks, maybe someone doesn't, but some are good, some are bad, but at least you're getting something different, something fresh. I think that's something that CML needs to do. And, I think there's a way, like if you could figure it out, it's not like they're right now that they're still like not having to run too many shows and not having to fill out an entire card with just, a bunch of trios matches. There's a way where you could actually come up with some creative cards, CMLL lineups, where it will at least seem, it'll just come across different just because of what's been going on. I think that's something CML really should look at. But like I said, NGD leaving, huge blow. I don't know if that's going to be something that they're going to be able to recover from within this year. Honestly, I know people are going to be like, oh, they have other talent, but it's like, nah, I don't know. You don't lose 3 guys like that. And there's a way to do it, but the fact that it's very difficult just because NGD, like they were there for 6-7 years in CMLL, and it took them, I mean, they were very quickly elevated to main event status, but the difference was that they were, for the most part, they were good. Cuatrero was really good before he started getting a little too repetitive. But Sanson had charisma, and Forastero, a few hiccups early on, and he started to improve and show that he could work. So you just can't have that level of talent leave. It's a significant blow. I don't know how CML fixes this. They could do something like revive. I think the one thing they probably should do is probably revive the Infernales, just because, even if it means bringing back Satanico, but just because losing or doing something like a trio that makes a little more sense, that you could have a little bit more consistency of having them there. They try to do this whole new Ingobernables, and it just hasn't panned out, just because Niebla Roja has been spending a lot of time in the United States and isn't available as much as he used to be. And I don't know if a new Ingobernables really made sense for them. They need a different type of trio, just to like make it, just to elevate, just to make add a little bit more freshness to the cards. So now we get to Triplemania XXIX, the recap. I thought this was a good show. There were a couple of matches that I wasn't really high on, and there was one that was really bad. But for the most part, I thought it was a good show. I don't think there was a really great standout match in this card. If I had to say, the best match for me on the show might have been the main event, just because there was so much more involved, as far as, the crowd really being into it, and the fact that they had this was probably the one match that had a little bit more of a storyline to it. And they kind of, not only the storyline within what's been going on within AAA, but, just the history behind Rey Escorpion being Super Porky's last big rival, going up against Psycho Clown, who's out for revenge. Then you have the fact that Super Porky had just passed away. So this kind of meant a little bit more as far as emotionally for fans, just to be able to connect to it. But, I think that match, along with the Omega Andrade and the 3-way tag match, I thought those were probably the best matches on the show. I think the one problem I have with AAA is the same one that I usually have, is that they overbook a lot of stuff, and there's always too much interference, too many dumb things that go on that make no sense. I would think there would be some stuff that you would realize, being a Lucha Libre promotion, it makes more sense not to do, but they still do it, which is kind of crazy. I think they forget that, it's just mind-boggling, some of the stuff they do. But for the most part, I thought the show was solid. I was glad that I was able to watch it. I didn't watch it live. For those of you who watched it live, it was streamed by the Cubs fan. I think everybody should thank him for actually doing that. First of all, finding the time and figuring out how to do it. I'm not that tech savvy enough to know the how he did it, how he does all this stuff with streaming services, especially via Twitch. I think if he explained it to me, I could probably understand it, just because I am a little bit more aware of what some of the inner workings of that stuff goes, just because I do so much stuff online. But there's a lot of like the intricacies inside of it where if you ask me to explain it, I wouldn't be able to. But if somebody explains it to me, I could understand it. But I think that's what's really kind of, I honestly, for the most part, if the Cubs fan doesn't do that, there's so much that we probably don't watch just because, and especially with Triplemania, with AAA, with the lawsuit that's going on with them. So you're really talking about, for the most part, we would not be watching any amount of AAA right now, zero right now, basically, unless you were hoping that somebody else would do it. And honestly, when I've searched for stuff that's AAA related from the last, since this whole lawsuit started, and they've had to close their own YouTube channel, there's very little as far as recent stuff. It's basically the Cubs fan, what he posts, and then maybe like one or two other people might on occasion put something up, but then their YouTube channel gets a strike and it disappears, and then you don't see it, or they'll have the video and it's not really particularly good video quality because they basically just get it one time, and then like if it's streamed live, that's the one they're going to get. If it's going to, instead of like trying to figure out, hey, maybe this should, if they air it on TV, I'll post the TV version just because it'll be better quality. And they don't do that. So you kind of miss out on some of that stuff. You're going to have to deal with the whole video quality, audio issues, stuff, technology, internet, the whole, their internet dying and shit like that. So it's good that someone like the Cubs fan is around to do this stuff, because otherwise we would not have AAA. And I think there would probably be a couple of CMLL shows that we wouldn't be watching just because he's the one that actually does that. Hopefully this never happens to CMLL. Otherwise, we're pretty much devoid. We're going to be stuck watching IWRG, all of us, those Thursday shows, unless we sign up to the premium Mas Lucha premium service. And I don't know how many people have actually signed up to that, just because they really would do. That's the thing. Like, so many of these promotions and people within wrestling thought it was a bright idea to start new projects during a pandemic. I think Mas Lucha started their premium service right around the time that the pandemic started. So I don't know what they were thinking. They probably should have held off that for at least another year or two. They make enough off of their YouTube channel where they don't. I don't think they needed that premium service. And now they're pretty much. I mean, the premium service. I mean, I don't really see that they don't. I don't see them promote a lot of shows that they're exclusive to that. Because first of all, you're going to have to pay the promoters as well. And I don't think that's kind of something that they really want to do, because then you're splitting in profits, and, that leads to other issues, and it's a mess. But I think we should all just be glad that Cubs fan was around to do this, because otherwise we would not be watching Triplemania. Those of you who watched it live, I think it was on a Saturday, so I was out. I think I was out I went to my brother-in-law's father's birthday party, which we left early just because there were so many people showing up. We were like, yeah, we were there when there was maybe like less than 100 people. And then like there was, as it started adding more and more people, we kind of just decided we had to go. I think our because we were outdoors, it wasn't an indoor thing, it was an outdoor thing. So we were able to get a table and stay separate from everyone. But as more people started showing up, it kind of became a bit of a concern. So we decided to go home. I wasn't really thinking about watching Triplemania. I've had to pass on going to places just because I felt the need to watch Triplemania live. And this year, at least, I would have been okay with it because it was actually good. And there's been I think the last couple of years, it's been pretty good where I could find an excuse to actually watch it live and not feel bad that, I turned something else down. But there was actually, I think the year that they did the Villanos versus Psycho Circus trios match, which was a pretty bad Triplemania. That match was really awful. That year, I think Superboy had a birthday party, and I missed out on that. And I have not heard the end of it. Let's just put it that way. So I thought Triplemania, like I said, was good. I think the one thing, like I said, if they just cut back on interference and the same stuff that they do all the time with Hijo de Tirantes, I think the show would have been so much better. Unfortunately, they can't stop themselves from doing it, and it really, I think it kind of turned off some of the matches for me as far as like being something that was even better. Like I said, I don't think there was a single match that I thought was like a match of the year candidate. I think the highest thing that I saw Meltzer give a couple of things 4 stars, and I'm like, I don't think those matches were 4 stars. Even if you go back and maybe it's 4 stars now because he's viewing it from this current thing, but like I don't think like I think he used to give 3 stars to matches that were way better on WCW Nitro, that were like Juventud Guerrero versus Kidman and stuff like that. And those matches were way better than anything that happened on Triple Mania. I'm gonna be honest. I don't think there was anything that came close to that. So if you watch some of those really good cruiserweight matches that Dave Meltzer gave maybe 3.25 stars or 3.5 stars, nothing was as good as that. Nothing was as good as that on this show. I just thought the peak matches were just good. It wasn't anything that I would say, oh, go out of your way to watch. It was memorable. So the opening match was the Marvel Lucha Libre match that had Aracno, Estrella, Cósmica, Leyenda Americana beating Picadura Letal, Terror Púrpura, and Venenoid. They were actually just having their match. I thought this was a good match to open up, not the level of some of those crazy opening matches they used to have on AAA shows. They've kind of toned that down lately. I don't know if it. I'm trying to think of it. I can't remember the last couple of big shows, but I think for the most part, the last big shows haven't really had that big, because I think they did the Marvel opener as well at the last big show. I think it might have been Triple Mania. And I don't think I watched Rey the Reyes actually. I can't remember the opener from Rey the Reyes. But that for the most part hasn't been like the big blow away opening match that they used to have, that where you're just talking about, whoa, this was crazy, this was amazing. Might have not been the best match on the show, but you just thought it was crazy and wild and loved it. This was just an okay, good match. They had El Furioso, who is the Hulk, made the save for the heroes and helped them get the win. After the match ended, El Engañoso, who is Loki, appeared on the video screen and poked fun at all the heroes. So they're basically bringing in more heroes and villains into the Marvel Lucha Libre world. I actually think this is perfectly fine, and I actually dig this. If this becomes one of the matches, like if they do angles with this stuff on their show, I think this is great. I think this is it kind of feels like one of those multiverse type of things where you have AAA proper, with all the AAA talent and their storylines, the weirdness of their storylines, and then they do something like this with the Marvel Lucha Libre characters. I think that's actually pretty cool. I kind of hope they kind of improve the quality of what they're doing with them, because they had Arachno, who's Spider-Man, kind of do he was kind of like coming down from the on this wire, but he had to slow down every couple of seconds, so it didn't look nearly as cool as I think they wanted it to look like. But better for them to be safe and look that way. People kind of get the idea that, hey, that's what you're trying to do. Personally, I wouldn't have done it. Just there's ways to like make him look cool without doing that stuff. But like I said, if they actually do this where it's like their own little storyline and it's one match on every big show, and even like on their TV tapings, if they want to do that and have storylines and stuff like that, I think it's great. I think it adds something to AAA as far as the promotion. It gives them, that could be focused on by whoever's handling the Marvel Lucha Libre matches and what they want to do with that. And then you have the other stuff that's just the AAA stuff. I think that's perfectly fine. After that, we had Mr. Iguana beating Carta Brava Jr. to win the Copa Bardal, or this is pretty much the Copa Triplemania. I think there was about 11 or 12 participants. There was a couple of guys who just did run-ins. Among the other participants were Mysticis Jr., Aramis, Tito Santana, Niño Hamburguesa, Drago, Pimpinela Scarlata, Argenis, Viano Tercero Jr., Mochocota Jr., and Mamba. Parca Negra and Superfly, I think, were the ones that ran in and attacked people during the match. I thought this match was okay. The over-the-top rule thing, I don't know why they keep doing that. It makes no sense. I don't see the point in doing it, because it even led to one of the funniest memes that I saw was Mil Mascaras. They made a comparison of Mil Mascaras when he was eliminated, when he eliminated himself from the Royal Rumble by doing a dive to the outside. And then they had Aramis, who did the same thing in Copa Bardal, doing the same thing. And it's just a picture back to side by side. And then LA Park kind of talking about how you shouldn't win any Copa Triplemania or any Copas on a Triplemania show, because it usually leads to a run, you getting attacked. And Mr. Iguana made a joke about how he knows why Aramis eliminated himself from that match. I thought that was actually kind of I think that's, to me, they had the ideal thing for them in that Aztec warfare concept that they had for Lucha Underground. I think they should have brought that in for AAA's for their copas. The pin by eliminated by pinfall or submission. I think that makes more sense. That way you allow these guys to do dives and make it a little bit more exciting, especially when you have RMA's Mystices Jr., Drago, and a few other guys in this that actually do dives and would have been a little bit more entertaining. Octagon Jr. also got involved. He was on commentary for a bit of time, and then he got involved when I think it went. I don't know if it was when La Parca Negra and Superfly ran in. It was about that time, and I think he also came in when NGD made their appearance. After the match, NGD appeared and attacked Mr. Iguana. They had their whole. They already had a video of them being in AAA, and also like the music. They did a remix of the song they used in CMLL. So they were, this was already planned well in advance. I would guess they were already in talks with AAA at least 2 months prior to this, and maybe kind of finalizing the agreement by a month. Because there's no way this was something that was going to be one day within 1 week. And the fact that CMLL caught on so quickly, I get the feeling Sansón Cuatrero Forastero decided to leave on a good note from CMLL, and kind of gave them a heads up that they were leaving, and they let CMLL kind of be the ones to send out the statement rather than them just show up all of a sudden. I think there was probably that possibility that they could have shown up with their trios titles, and they didn't do that. I think there's a certain way of doing it where you're going to want to keep business open, and I think they did the right way. They did it the right way. Now, I mean, if there's still more trash talking, there wasn't as much trash talking about NGD. It's been more about Diamante, Azul than anything else from the CMLL side. NGD, they've kind of like, they left. They're not going to make a big deal about it. They've moved on. There was also talk that Conan wanted to get Sofia Alonso on the show, or AAA wants to get Sofia Alonso at some point to be part of the whole Empresa angle, I guess. I don't know if I don't see that happening, just because Paco Alonso was really the one that had the most heat with Antonio Pena and AAA. So, and that's her dad. So I think she would continue on her dad's wishes. I think more likely if she ever did something out of wrestling, she'd probably do it elsewhere and not necessarily with AAA. That would be a little bit too weird, honestly. But after they attacked Mr. Iguana, Aramis Octagon Jr. went in and tried to make the save. They got attacked as well. Then Poder del Norte came in and had a face-off with NGD before they were eventually attacked by La Empresa, Puma King, Diamante Azul, and Sam Adonis. La Empresa then offered NGD the Empresa t-shirts, and it looks like they might actually be joining that group, which would automatically suddenly elevate that group as far as who they have as part of their promotion. I don't know if that's going to be something they're going to want to be a big significant part of that, because they're already their own trio, their own group. Although they did say in their video that they actually planned on having more people join the Dinamitas. So there's a possibility we might actually see more people join. I don't know if they mean like joining another group, or they're going to start their own like a faction of Dinamitas, maybe bring in some of their other relatives. Who knows? I mean when Mascareño 2000 says he has his whole his tagline is the father of more than 20. You never know. Maybe there are more kids. But that was actually a really good angle. Right away, you get Poder del Norte versus NGD, which are pretty much two of the bigger trios of the past 7 years in Lucha Libre. So I think that's going to be a very interesting feud. Poder del Norte really tends to bring out the best out of other trios. So this should be a fun trios feud. I could see that being... First of all, that's probably going to be the first feud that NGD is going to have where they're going to actually have to, it's going to be a brawl and a lot of possibly bleeding in their matches. They weren't doing that in CMLL, so it's going to be a big difference for them. But it's really going to be interesting. I also look forward to possibly even like NGD going up against Hijo de Vikingo, Laredo Kid, Mystices Jr., Octagon Jr., those type of guys, just because they have that fit with them. That's really where they were best. The guys they worked best with were the guys like that. The problem with CML is that they started kind of putting a lot of those guys that were that good were starting to leave or getting a little too old to do a lot of that stuff. So it became a little bit more difficult for that to happen in CMLL. But it should be fun. It should be an entertaining. Like I said, there's so many people out there now on the independent scene that are available, and CML kind of closing the doors on those guys makes it very difficult and makes it easier for AAA to just cherry pick who they want as far as big angles, big storylines that they want to do. Maybe it makes more sense for they're gonna have NGD's gonna do well. That's basically what I'm saying. I don't know about what they'll do as far as outside of AAA, if they're going to succeed there outside. But with starting off with Pelea del Norte should be a fun rivalry. After that match, we had the women's match, which ended up being Diona Purrazzo beating Fabi Apache to win the AAA Reina de Reinas title. The Impact Knockouts title was also on the line. Lady Maravilla was Diona Purrazzo's second, and Lady Shani was Fabi Apache's second. Hijo de Tirantes and Lady Maravilla got involved a lot in this match and helped Purrazzo beat Fabi. This match, I mean, I don't know how many times. I think this is like it's probably has to be 10 years that we've been going through the whole Hijo de Tirantes doesn't get along with Fabi Apache, and they always do this. I think one of these years they really have to do an angle where Hijo de Tirantes is the referee for a Triplemania match for Fabi or whatever big show that she's a part of. And what they got to do is they got to like have him be introduced as the referee, and then Fabi kind of demand that he get tossed out as the referee and bring in a different referee. And let that be something completely different, because I think that's one thing that they really should do. Obviously, she was going to drop the title to Purrazzo, but maybe like in a rematch, maybe do that just because, oh God, how many times can we have Hijo de Tirantes and the Fabi Apache stuff go on and on? There were moments in this match where I didn't think it was that bad, but the match was awful. I think they didn't click at all. You could see a little bit of Purrazzo that she has talent and she's pretty good. But it just felt like it was so slow, and it was kind of like every time you kind of thought there was going to be a little bit more of a build up to it, there would be an interference spot or Hijo de Tirantes would do something, and it just really drove me mad, and it wasn't something that I did not enjoy this match. Really definitely one of my least favorite matches. And the sad thing is that this continues a tradition of women's wrestling in Mexico, where women's matches get big opportunities and they kind of get screwed over because either the officiating, or like in AAA's case, it's usually the officiating, or there's one bad apple in the match that doesn't really want to have a good match. Or in CML's case, there's Dallas involved in the match and it just doesn't work out at all. But if it doesn't involve, I don't know. I just think there's ways of improving these matches. This should not be an ongoing thing all the time. Hopefully that's something that they do at least once, where it's like suddenly there's no Hijo de Tirantes in this match. They could always put him into another one of the matches where he's not going to interfere too much. After that, we got the three-way tag match as Phoenix and Pentagon Jr. beat Hijo del Vikingo and Laredo Kid and Taurus, whose mystery partner ended up being Brian Cage. The rumor, or actually the story being told by, I know Rob Viper mentioned it on the Como Estas podcast with the Cubs fan, and also Cubs fan said Conan mentioned it as well. So they both obviously knew. They probably even told each other or whatever. They talked, or they knew. Somewhere along the line, they both knew. Well, obviously Conan knows why, but Dragon Lee was supposedly going to be the surprise tag team partner for Taurus, which I thought would have made this match a lot better. I thought Cage and Taurus actually looked good as a tag team. If they actually ever wanted to go back to that would actually be fine, just because I think Cage fits more in a lucha libre type of match than he does necessarily in when he's trying to be the big muscular guy who's very athletic and works in the US and does and he's working against somebody who's smaller, and when he should really be the big guy, kind of like he could do something spectacular but not make it all him being spectacular. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit it's just really it's just a matter of just finding a balance on what you're doing during a match against a certain opponent. And there were times where, like in Lucha Underground, where I thought maybe he should have been a little bit more of the big badass guy that could break stuff. Remember when Lucha Underground started, they did that one skit where a bunch of thugs attacked Brian Cage and nothing would stop him. Like they would hit him with boxes or whatever, or those crates, and nothing was knocking him down. That's what he should be. That's what he should be against certain people. But in Lucha Libre, he could get away with being very athletic because, there's always going to, there's going to be guys who could do a little more than he can. So he's able to not come across completely just being an athletic guy, because he could also do a lot of power moves, and he could be a bit more of a badass. And in this match, I thought he did that well. And he teamed up with Torres, and Torres pretty much is a badass on his own. I don't know why they had Hijo de Vikingo get pinned. I think that's the one thing, especially when they're high on him, and he's the one guy that they kind of want to start elevating. Of all the guys, they probably could have had Torres to take the loss. Especially since he's not really because they were basically, if you're going to double team, you could have had Laredo Kid take the loss, honestly. It wasn't like it was a clean pin anyways, because it was a double team pin. But I kind of felt Hijo de Vikingo should have been, and honestly, I think Hijo de Vikingo and Laredo Kid should have won the tag titles, because then you could have done something where later down the road you could have a rematch, or you could actually have them work against some foreign tag team that comes in against them, and then eventually go back to the Lucha Brothers or another tag team. I think that would have made a little bit more sense to me, just because I also think you kind of have to like switch Phoenix and Penta to something else. But I think the idea is that they want to have, for whatever reason, they want to have guys who aren't part of the promotion all the time holding the titles. And I thought this was a good match. Hijo de Vikingo always impresses, always entertains. Lucha Brothers are always fun to watch. This match had a lot of everybody on this. It was so good that it was enjoyable. After that, we get the Empresa versus Team AAA match, which was DMT, Azul, Puma King, and Sam Adonis beating Chessman, Murder Clown, and Pagano. Basically, this ends with Pagano and Chessman getting into a fight, and then La Empresa took advantage of this to get the win. Diamante Azul, I think, sent Pagano through a table, and then I think it was Puma King that pinned Chessman, because if I'm not mistaken, I think Sam Adonis did a dive to the outside onto someone, onto Murder Clown, I think. But it was this match. I didn't think it was that good. What happened during this match? If you watch this, if you're wondering what Diamante Azul was like now that he left CMLL and is now in AAA, he's pretty much the same wrestler. You still have those confusing moments where he has no idea what he's doing and nobody else knows what the fuck he's doing. So then there's like these pauses, and even his partners are just looking at him like, what? Like they're not sure what he's going to do. And, he does whatever he wants, and it's kind of like a bit of a wild card type of thing. And the only difference is that he's not really good. So it just makes it look even worse. I thought this was probably the second worst match on the card. Nothing really came out of it. Other than La Empresa getting the win just to like continue the whole storyline. I think if they're going to have NGD be part of the group, it strengthens it. One of the things I'm curious about is maybe they add one more person, and maybe like down the road they do like I don't know how many of you guys remember, but some of the old Japanese promotions, when they would do interpromotional feuds, like within promotions, like the UWF versus New Japan feud, and then like even like the faction wars in Michinoku Pro, and I think even Toryumon did it. They would do 5-on-5 matches, so they would have like 5 singles matches, or like they would do 5 matches, and like a trios or a tag, but for the most part they did 5 versus 5. I think AAA should do a show like that, like just have a 5 versus, or within their card have a 5 versus 5 match, like where you could do the whole rivalry AAA versus La Empresa. I don't know, like for whatever reason, all these I'm surprised Conan must not have never watched any Japanese wrestling, because I always enjoyed that stuff. Like even like when they did the NWO, I don't think they really did that. But I always used to enjoy that. Like if you go back and watch the New Japan versus UWF feud, they did a 5 versus 5 match. So basically, all 5 guys, 5 guys from each side would be outside, but they would have matches, and then as the match went on, guys would get eliminated, kind of a torneo cibernetico. But usually, like once that match ended, the guy would move, and he would win. The other guy would lose, and they would continue on. But it would basically be 5 matches. It wasn't like continuing on till somebody finally there's one guy left. It was more like the 5th guy had to determine the win. So basically, they would tie it up. The 4 matches would end up 2-2, and then the final one would be to determine who wins that series. And I think they should do that. I don't know. Like I always enjoyed that stuff. But yeah, I wasn't very high on this match. Maybe they should do that next time. Maybe I would enjoy that a little more. After that, we got the big AAA World Mega Heavyweight title match as Kenny Omega beat Andrade. Prior to the match, Conan wanted to talk strategy with Andrade because he was at that point in time still thinking he was going to be Andrade's second. I think he was on AEW and was kind of hyping that stuff as well. But then Andrade told him that he had someone bigger scheduled for him to be in his corner. And, one of the funny things is that there was, I don't know if anybody saw this, but on Twitter, Maximo and Rush had kind of teased the possibility of being in Triplemania. I think they did that. Obviously, Maximo did it for Psycho Clown, and then, Rush probably did it more so for Andrade. And that kind of like led to this thing where everybody was wondering who was going to be a second. Conan instead decides to go over and talk to Kenny Omega and make him an offer. And Kenny Omega, he ends up being Kenny Omega's second. Michael Nakazawa and Don Callis were not available, so Conan took over as Kenny Omega's second. And then Andrade came out with his future father-in-law. I don't think Charlotte and him are married yet, but Ric Flair accompanied him to the ring, and I think that got more publicity than anything else from Triplemania. I saw that trending nonstop for about 24 hours, Saturday to all the way to about maybe early Sunday. And then that was really what a lot of people were talking about, the fact that Ric Flair had made his appearance on AAA, which led to a lot of people wondering if this was the first time he had actually been in one of the top promotions in Mexico. And it actually was, because he never appeared for EMLL, CMLL, or UWA. And this became like a big deal for AAA. Unfortunate that they couldn't use that to like actually promote themselves internationally because of the lawsuit. They can't do that stuff. They did on their social media. Like I think their Twitter is the only thing that's visible to the US. I'm not really sure. I'm not sure their Facebook is visible to us. I think some of it might be, but not like the videos and stuff like that. But this was something that they definitely could have used. And I think that's the difference between AAA and CMLL. AAA kind of sees this as an opportunity to like, make themselves a bigger deal, whereas CMLL, the times that they've had the opportunity to bring in a big name, they act like they don't know who it is, or they don't know who it is, and they don't really bring them in because they don't look at the value of what that person can actually bring to as far as drawing people in and getting a lot of publicity. And Flair got that for AAA. The funny thing is that I think I said 24 hours he was trending. I think there was another couple of hours he was trending, not because of Triplemania, but because there was a photo of an older gentleman going down on a woman on a bus, inside a bus. No, inside a train. It was inside a train. And that was like, somebody pointed out that whoever took the picture posted, "Is this Ric Flair or something?" And that became like that was trending for like a long stretch of time. And for whatever reason, the first thing I said is like, Ric Flair, there's so many athletes and entertainers who would deny that, but Ric Flair is definitely not going to deny that. And sure enough, Ric Flair did not deny that. And I thought that was hilarious. He was probably like, hey, I'll take the publicity for that. But that was basically the other reason he was trending over the weekend. But I thought this was a good match. I don't think it stood out as much as the Dragon Lee, Laredo Kid, or Phoenix matches that Kenny Omega had, which I don't really think it's so much Andrade's fault. I think a lot of people are kind of placing the blame on Andrade not being at that level. I think the reason it probably didn't come off that way is also because they were kind of trying to do more of a storyline type of thing, obviously involving the seconds, whereas previously you really didn't. I mean, you had people kind of get involved, but it wasn't like, it was still more of an athletic group of guys getting involved. It wasn't Conan with hip replacement surgery getting involved and you making sure the guy doesn't get hurt, or Ric Flair who's had health issues recently and him getting hurt. So you kind of have to work around that stuff. So I thought they still had a good match, not necessarily a great match. Does this mean I think less of Andrade? I think the problem I have with Andrade is that he really needs to get I think he needs to get booked and work with guys like Phoenix, Penta Zero M, Laredo Kid, just to get back into the thick of things of being a fun luchador, kind of see what these guys are doing now. Hijo de Vikingo, guys like that, just because Dragon Lee, another one, Bandito, just because I think he needs to like start getting back into the rhythm of what he was before he went to WWE and got short-circuited with all these their philosophy of what makes a good wrestler. And the finish of it, of course, being Omega using the belt to win and knocking out Andrade to retain the title. There was a lot of news about this. The Observer mentioned that at one point, initially, AEW wanted Kenny Omega to retain the title, while AAA was thinking that they were gonna like switch it at this point in time and have Andrade win it, so they could go from Andrade to somebody like from AAA, probably most likely Psycho Clown, and they ended up not doing that. Then I guess from AEW's point of view, they wanted Kenny Omega to at least have more than one title, and he had just dropped his title, the Impact title, to Christian Cage. Does he even wrestle as Christian Cage? And I think he does when he's not in WWE. That's the old name. Man, that's like his fucking like when he first started name. It's like when for the longest time when Chris Zellner would send me Lucha reports, and he constantly kept referring to El Terrible as Damien El Terrible, and he hadn't used that name in 10 years, and I was like, but I still kept it on there. I was like, man, I'm going to keep it on there. I think I stopped after a while just because I wanted to differentiate the Lucha report from what he was sending to everyone else to what I was posting on LuchaWorld. But every once in a while, you have one wrestler that if you've seen him for like the longest time, it's like you still refer to him by his previous name. Like Andrade, sometimes I'll still call him La Sombra. But yeah, like Omega dropped the title to Christian, the Impact title to Christian. So then they kind of still wanted him to have another world title just to keep it going. Then when they got Ric Flair, then the story was that Kenny Omega, when he found out Ric Flair was going to be in Andrade's corner, he kind of thought it would be cool if he dropped it to Andrade because Ric Flair was there and it became a big deal. It would become a bigger deal. And then apparently Dorian Roldan nixed it and decided that he preferred Kenny Omega holding the title a little bit longer. The belief was that there might have been there was a feeling that he hadn't really reached an agreement with Andrade for an upcoming appearance, so they hadn't agreed on whether or not he would appear again. So to him, it was easier just to keep it on Kenny Omega and make sure that he came in. I don't know if he's going to drop it to whoever he does next. There's rumors that it would be Hijo de Vikingo. Others think it'd be Psycho Clown. I don't know if you could actually possibly have Hijo de Vikingo as champion. I think it would be cool. But the fact that he's so much smaller than, I think people would just, I mean, for the most part, I think a lot of the old guard in Lucha Libre would just like get very worked up about him being a world champion, especially it being a world mega championship. But I think it's very different. I think to me, like, you have to view wrestling the way it has been evolving the last couple of years. Rey Mysterio became a WWE champion. I mean, I don't see why. I think if it's not a weight class type of title, it's perfectly fine for that guy to win the title. I think that's what's kind of like holding back CMLL also, because their world heavyweight title sticks to that heavyweight title, and that's basically all. That's the main title, and it has to be. They're basically having to create heavyweights. Atlantis Jr. being a heavyweight, that's still mind-boggling. I'll talk about it later on this podcast. But I thought it was a cool appearance of Ric Flair. The match, like I said, was good. I, I, I'm okay with the direction they're going with. Kenny Omega being champion. I think if it leads to Kenny Omega versus Hijo de Vikingo or even Psycho Clown, I think that, or even both, because I mean, you don't know, he could maybe like retain it against Hijo de Vikingo and then finally build it up to, Psycho Clown. Next Triplemania could be Psycho Clown versus Kenny Omega for that belt. I think that would be perfectly fine. I mean, if they want to keep it on him for another year, I mean, we don't know what the situation is right now with the pandemic. AAA isn't in any rush to they're not running as many shows as they used to. They're still doing a lot of limited capacity shows, so it's like, why rush it right now when you don't really need to? Finally, the main event: Psycho Clown beat Rey Scorpion to win his hair. I thought this was a good match. The intros I thought were fun, with Psycho Clown coming in with Goya Kong and his two sons, and him wearing Brazo's gear. Brazo Plata gear, so it looked cool. They were honoring him, and I thought that was really a cool thing to see. Rey Scorpion was accompanied by Los Mercenarios, La Hiedra, Taurus, and his brother El Samoano, who I guess is probably going to take over Tejano Jr.'s spot if they're going to keep it a 4-man crew for the Mercenarios. Of course, I don't think he's going to be wrestling as frequently as, probably be more of a guy who kind of interferes or works in trios matches, but not necessarily be the part of the tag team in a tag match or stuff like that. I would think if they were going to have them be a tag team, it'd probably be Rey Scorpion and Taurus as the tag team, or even Rey Scorpion and La Hiedra as a tag team, and not necessarily Samoano. I thought this was a good match. They did do the blood. They did blood. I think that was one of the other things that happened with the Impresa Team AAA match, is the fact that Pagano couldn't do blood. And I think the only thing Pagano really did was that one spot where he nearly killed himself doing a tope con hilo to the outside. He barely got past the ring apron, and with this match having blood, I thought they wisely didn't allow Pagano to do some of the crazy stuff that he does. This I thought was a good match. I wasn't a fan of the finish just because I don't really see the point. Goya Kong turning on Psycho Clown didn't really lead to anything, to him losing to Rey Scorpion. He was able to pull off the win, but I don't really see the point in having Goya Kong turn on him. Like if it was Maximo, I could see it, because you could always do Maximo versus Psycho Clown, because it's guy versus guy. But Psycho Clown, Goya Kong, I don't know what would it lead to. It wouldn't lead to anything, honestly. Like I don't really know, other than them doing storyline type of stuff and her maybe aligning herself with somebody to go against Psycho Clown. But other than that, I don't really see how it would actually necessarily have helped. And it also didn't help the fact that towards the end, basically Rey Scorpion and Psycho Clown were showing each other respect as far as what they did in the match. I know they're going to have they already had their next the next big not a AAA show, but one of their house shows, or it's going to be Psycho Clown versus Rey Scorpion as the main event. And they usually do that because they kind of want that to be that continues on for at least a month or two. But hopefully they start setting up somebody else for Psycho Clown. Like I said, I think they really should start setting up Psycho Clown, not necessarily being the next challenger to Kenny Omega, but maybe him getting into a feud with somebody that kind of eventually that guy leads to him going up against Kenny Omega, or whoever's going to be the world champion by the time this happens, or eventually if Kenny has to drop the title. It makes more sense for them to do that. But like I said, personally, I would like to see them do, I could see them totally doing Hijo del Vikingo versus Kenny Omega, then maybe follow that up with Kenny Omega versus Psycho Clown. That would actually be pretty good. So Triplemania for the most part, like I said, good. I recommend if you had to watch something from it, watch the 3-way tag, the Rey Scorpion Psycho Clown match, and the Andrade Kenny Omega match. Everything else I thought was kind of just an okay type of match, nothing too memorable. But those 3 matches I thought were good. If you're looking for something that's just great, blow your mind, none of these were really at that level. But yeah, I still thought it was a fun show. It was entertaining. So now we go on to some CMLL news. They recently made the announcement for their upcoming big shows. Of course, what's been a over almost 18-month long wait for the much anticipated hair match between Felino and Carbonario will be happening on September 17th. That's when they will be holding Dos Leyendas. They'll be also honoring Salvador Luteroth and Sangre Chicana. But the main event will be Felino versus Carbonario in a hair match. A match that I don't think anybody really cares enough about to really watch. I'd be curious to see if CML announces some sort of deal for both the shows, just to see if they could get some interest in that Dos Leyendas show that, people will order it. Besides only ordering the anniversary. And even the anniversary, I don't know how many people are going to want to order that, because both shows are questionable as far as people wanting to see them. The roster has kind of gotten a little weaker, and it's going to be a little bit of a while for them to actually be able to put together even like a makeshift group that people want to see. It's kind of going to be a little bit difficult for the time being. But Dos Leyendas, Felino versus Carbonario was supposed to happen in March 2020, but the pandemic hit, and they are doing it now. I would assume Felino is going to be the one taking the loss to continue Carbonario being the big pushed wrestler. Carbonario missed a long stretch of time last year. I think he got hurt during some of the early tapings of the CML when they started taping shows, and then he missed I think he was out for 6 to 8 months or something with an injury. So, and also he was finishing up school also. He's an accountant, so he hasn't really looked. I've seen a few highlight videos, and he hasn't looked in great shape. Felino pretty much hasn't, just because of age, of course, and that's just going to hit you no matter what. And you add in the pandemic, it just leads to a little more of an issue. But that will be the Dos Leyendas main event. They haven't announced the rest of the card, but what they did announce was that the 88th anniversary show will be happening on September 24th. And once again, much like last year, they are going to do a championship night of champions with only this time there will be 5 championship matches. Fans will get to vote on who will be the people challenging for those titles. And they've already made a big change in that, which we will talk about at the end, because I think that might end up being the big main event. But they announced the 5 matches and the 5 titles. The first title announced was that the La Jarochita and Lluvia would be defending the Mexican National Women's Tag Team titles on that show. The list of challengers included Dallas teaming up with Stephanie Vacker, Dark Silueta and Reina Isis teaming up, Princesa Suhey and La Guerrera, and the last team involved is the legendary luchadors of CMLL, being Marcela and Amapola, longtime rivals, teaming up. They teamed up during the pandemic as I think it was like a dream match where it was like a Relevos Increíbles. And I guess this time they want to do it again only for this. It'd be interesting. Unfortunately, the fans aren't voting for them in droves. Amapola has no social media, so she's automatically not going to get any votes because fans are not following her. And there's pretty much the fan voting has been driven by a lot of the whoever has a lot of a strong social media following. They're the ones that are going to get way more votes than the other ones that don't have it. And Amapola has none. Marcela has a little, but I mean, you're talking about 2 women that are well over 40 years old that aren't going to, I think they're well past their primes. Both of them can still go every so often, but they're not really at the level they were 10 years ago. Princesa Suhey and La Guerrera. Princesa Suhey does also have social media, but La Guerrera, I haven't seen if she has any. But they're a distant third. The leading vote getters right now have been Dallas and Stephanie Vacker as this time of this recording, but gaining very quickly are Dark Silueta and Reina Isis. Dark Silueta just advanced into the the women's Universal Turn final, which will be happening the following week. So she's getting not only that rub, but she also built up a little bit of a rivalry with Jarochita. So that's kind of Lluvia. Reina Isis and Dark Silueta, they both have a lot of a lot of social media, so they've been getting a lot more votes and are slowly gaining on Dallas and Stephanie Vacker. Both Dallas and Stephanie Vacker have social media. They get that, and also Stephanie Vacker has a lot of a backing from her home country of Chile. You know, being that there really isn't a Chilean wrestler that they can root for as far as within CML, and she's probably the biggest one that they could get. And they've been trying. She got hurt. But I kind of have a feeling Dark Silhouette and Reina Isis might surpass them just because they're riding a high, and I think that would probably be the best matchup for Jarochita and Lluvia. Lluvia and Jarochita have really become a pretty good tag team. I think Lluvia's really benefited from teaming with Jarochita, and also she kind of has changed her gear a bit. I think I've mentioned this in previous podcasts where I kind of thought that she's a good-looking girl when you see her on, even though she covers up her face on her social media. But when you see it, you can kind of see that she shows a little bit more of an appeal, a sex appeal. But when the outfit she would wear when she would wrestle, they just didn't. It kind of, I mean, it was supposed to come off that way, but it kind of didn't come out that way. But now that she's changed her gear enough, it's kind of added that to her, a new dimension to her, as far as showing, obviously, you don't want to make it seem like that's all guys are interested in, but that's part of it. Honestly, there has to be that little bit of sex appeal. You want great workers, but you also want a little bit of a reason for people to want to see them. There has to be something that's going to catch people's eyes, and that's kind of been something that Lluvia has done. And that should be, I think that would be a good match if it ends up being Dark Silhouette and Reina Isis challenging. The next match announced was the Mexican National Tag Team titles, which are currently held by Rey Cometa and Espiritu Negro. Their challengers include Blue Panther Jr. and Dark Panther, Akuma and Espanto Jr., Fugaz and Esfinge, Stigma and Pegaso, Magia Blanca and Halcon Suriano Jr. Honestly, like I didn't even add to the math, but if you look at the bottom three teams, I didn't really think about this, but if you look at the bottom three teams that I mentioned, Fugaz and Esfinge, Stigma, Pegaso, Magia Blanca, and Halcon Suriano Jr., those are teams that are formed out of being from the region they're from. Fugaz and Esfinge are from Guadalajara, Stigma and Pegaso are from Puebla, and Magia Blanca and Halcon Suriano Jr. are from the Laguna. I think they're from Torreon. So they kind of try to keep that together as kind of making it I guess they thought maybe that would work, but none of those three trios has any strong social media presence, so they pretty much have done nothing. Blue Panther Jr. and Dark Panther have some social media presence. They have accounts, but they don't really like go all out on them. Akuma and Espanto Jr., I think they might have a YouTube channel too, which they actually update. Or whatever they have enough of a following where they're actually the leading vote getters. Who would have thought Espanto Jr. would be getting any type of votes? One of the lower tiered guys. I mean, not very good at all. Akuma shows some potential. He has a cool personality. He's done interviews in the past where I thought CML could do more with him. I don't think he's that great of a worker, but I kind of would prefer that it would be Blue Panther Jr. and Dark Panther be the challengers. But if you're going to go with Akuma Espanto Jr., if you're going to go with them, I hope Rey Cometa and Espiritu Negro get the win. There's also the fact that Espiritu Negro, and initially when Akuma Espanto Jr. were forming a trio, I think it was La Ola Negra, Espiritu Negro was part of that. And so now that he's teaming with Rey Cometa, he has not done very little. I think he's done nothing with them. So it'd be kind of an interesting thing to like have them kind of go against each other. That's the only aspect. My first choice was always going to be Halcon Suriano Jr., but he's so distant from that it makes no sense to continue voting for that. The CMLL World Tag Team titles will also be defended on the anniversary show. They are currently held by Mystico and Caristico. The challengers include Volador Jr. and Titan, Los Gemelos Diablo, Ultimo Guerrero and Gran Guerrero, and honestly, Volador Jr. and Titan have such a huge lead. There's no reason to vote for anybody else. If you're voting because you want that to be the main event, continue voting for it just because you want it to be the main event. But I think that's pretty much done as far as Volador Jr. and Titan getting that match. And I think a lot of people want that because they kind of see that the other two teams are likely to get title shots against Caristico and Mystico if it should happen on a regular CMLL Friday show or on another show. Whereas Volador Jr. and Titan going against them would be like maybe a surprise sudden decision to do. So they figured, let's just do it at anniversary. And I think that would be a phenomenal match. Something that would be really, really good. Probably the match that if I was to order the anniversary show, it would be for that one match, just because I think it would be a standout match. All four of those guys can go, especially the fact that they work the same style. So that would be a fun match. The fourth match announced was the announcement that CMLL was able to bring back the Mexican national middleweight title, which was last held by Octagon while in AAA. He still held it as an independent. I guess CMLL was able to get it from him, or the commission, the Lucha Commission might have just given them the okay to create their own title. But this will be done a little differently, where the top four will wrestle on September 10th to determine the two finalists. There are a total of nine participants that will be that are getting votes right now. That includes Angel de Oro, Templario, El Audaz, Felino Jr., Enfermero Jr., Dragon Rojo Jr., Star Jr., El Coyote, and Hombre Bala Jr. And of course, the leading vote getter has been Templario. Not only does he does have a social media presence, but he's really, really good, and I think people want him to be the clear-cut winner of that title. The second place guy right now is Dragon Rojo Jr., and I think after him it is El Audaz and Angel de Oro are the four guys. I think El Coyote might be ahead of Angel de Oro and Audaz, which is really surprising, but he also did CML Informa. So anybody that really gets a little bit of a rub on social media, or they get on Informa, they're more likely to get votes, just because they've appeared on something. I personally was hoping Star Jr. would get an opportunity, or Hombre Bala Jr., just because I think those two guys are really good. Star Jr. has been really good the last couple of years, so I think he's somebody that I hope continues to move up the cards, because I think he's been fun. But I kind of think, I'm not a big Dragon Rojo Jr. fan, but he's a good guy. Maybe this, just being part of the final four might be something worth it for him. But I hope he doesn't end up winning it. I think it has to be Templario. Hopefully they position it where it's Templario versus Audaz, or Templario versus Angel de Oro or something like that, just because I don't really think it doesn't make sense for Dragon Rojo Jr. to be in the final. And the final match that was announced and actually had to be changed was, initially it was going to be a tournament for the Mexican national heavyweight title, which was initially announced as being last held by Diamante Azul, with the top four finishers in the fan voting wrestling on the September 3rd card. While that did not happen, because Diamante Azul decided that he was still the national heavyweight champion and wasn't ready to give up that title. He made a big stink about it. Rightfully so. I think that's the thing. Like, a lot of people you look at it and you're like, man, get over it or whatever. But the reality is, he has a right to it. The national titles are not part of the promotion of any promotion. They're handled by the Lucha Commission, and that can be defended anywhere, in the independents or in any AAA or CMLL. Unfortunately, Diamante Azul kind of fell victim to the fact that the commission is trying to do favors for CMLL, and CMLL is trying to bring back all the national titles into their fold, and this became a big issue, and everybody kind of looked bad out of this. It's kind of funny because, like I said, Dinamitas, Nueva Generación Dinamita left, and they didn't bring along the national trios titles. They just left them. They're like, why keep them? They left them. So CMLL basically right now has about 4 or 5 titles that are currently vacant that need to be filled. So what CMLL decided to do was that they were going to do a tournament for the national heavyweight title at a later time. But they basically had Julio Cesar Rivera do this big rant about YouTube channels and the yellow media, los amarillistas, los reporteros amarillistas. And it became like this big thing where he was just burying everybody, saying how they're wrong and all stuff. When nobody's wrong. For the most part, everybody's right. I mean, if you don't think, honestly, it's for a title. I don't think Diamante Azul should really be worried about this. Worst case scenario, Diamante Azul goes to another promotion, wins the title there, and that's pretty much about the same level of a national title at this point in time. It's not the 1960s where these national titles were like a huge deal, or in the 70s. It's not that big of a deal now. They kind of, it's cool to have, but it's not really like, if you don't have it, it's not the end of the world. There's other titles to hold. And honestly, for the most part, titles in Mexico are so meaningless because everybody has so many. I mean, CMLL alone has over 20 titles within their roster. Not to mention the universal titles, and then the Leyenda de Plata, Leyenda Azul, all these that have belt. I mean, they also have trophies and belts for that stuff. So it's kind of a ridiculous thing where they have so many trophies and championships and all this stuff that it just defeats the whole purpose of how important a championship belt is. But CML decided that they weren't gonna like do this because they kind of felt that they didn't want to continue this to be the talk of Lucha Libre during the anniversary, that they would do this at a later time. So instead of having the Mexican National Heavyweight title determined by 4 participants, and then leading to the final 2 going into the anniversary to challenge for the title, they decided to have Ultimo Guerrero defend the CML World Heavyweight title, which honestly ends up being a better main event or match on the anniversary. Say what you want about Ultimo Guerrero, but the guy is a hell of a performer, and he's a big star in the eyes of pretty much everyone. That as much as I would have liked to have seen Hechicero versus Carbonario, or Euphoria or Atlantis Jr., who's in this, see them kind of reach the final, as much as I would have liked to have seen that. Honestly, I think if you could get Hechicero versus Ultimo Guerrero on an anniversary show, I think that would be really cool to see, especially because Hechicero is very underutilized by CMLL, and they finally, because out of necessity, it kind of seems like they're going to have to start using him more often, and hopefully he kind of finally gets his big opportunity. But the participants for this tournament include Euphoria, Hechicero, Barbaro Carbonario, Terrible, Banderita del Ring, Valiente, and Atlantis Jr. Now, this is a heavyweight division. I don't normally, like, for me, I don't really care. Like, to me, if they defend the heavyweight title, there's other in the U.S. heavyweight titles now, they're being defended against lighter weights. Nobody makes a big stink about it. But in Mexico, because we still have a lot of, especially in CMLL, because there's still a lot of weight classes, people suddenly, you can't have a lighter weight wrestler challenge against the heavyweight title. And it makes sense. I get it. But at the same time, I mean, you're losing. I mean, there's not a lot of heavyweights in CMLL. Although I will say right now, the names I listed, if you just have like Euphoria, Hechicero, Carbonario isn't much of a heavyweight, but Terrible, Banderita del Ring, those are actually pretty decent heavyweights. I mean, it's not like they're there's been periods in CML where they really haven't had a strong group of heavyweights, because it's mostly a lot of guys who are light heavyweights, middleweights, and light and welterweights that fill up the roster. But for right now, they have about 4 or 5 guys that you could kind of say are in that heavyweight division. But honestly, that's not even enough. You really have to open it up to more people. I don't know if you could just like make it like, hey, okay, the heavyweight title's defended against anyone over a certain weight, and like it could be middleweight on up. Then I could see that. But Atlantis Jr., I don't even think he's a middleweight. I think he's more of a welterweight. He should have been in the middleweight tournament. I don't know how they, honestly, like what they should have done is switched over Dragon Rojo Jr. with Atlantis Jr. or Angel de Oro with Atlantis Jr. Because I think Angel de Oro or Dragon Rojo Jr. you could kind of maybe play off as being possibly heavyweights at this point in their careers. But Atlantis Jr. is still really skinny. I would say he's a welterweight. I don't know how they came up with him being in that. Maybe they just thought maybe they could get, he could, I don't think they had it in, I don't think they thought that people were going to vote for him right now, just because he's still not quite at the level of his dad as far as star power. But he is, or maybe they thought that, maybe somebody thought they were going to put Atlantis in, who knows. But right now, the leading vote getters, Hechicero. The other 3 that were right behind are Euphoria, Barbaro Carbonaro and Atlantis Jr. So I think that would have been also interesting if they would have done that, because we could have got Atlantis Jr. versus one of those guys, and Atlantis Jr. is good. And those four guys are all pretty good workers and guys who kind of want an opportunity. But I think if you get Hechicero versus Ultimo Guerrero, I think that'd be kind of fun. If they did that, I think they should also do like seconds, like have somebody like be the second. I think this would be what I would do. Hechicero's been wanting to do the Nuevo Infernales, and now that NGD's gone, they need that second tier top Rudo trio. And the fact that you don't have Los Ingobernables, the new ones, with Niebla Roja not wrestling there as often, you need a new group. Maybe have Euphoria be Hechicero second, and then you start building up the next Infernales. Maybe you bring Satanico just to team up with those two, and then later on you splinter out Satanico and you bring in a third member. But I think I'm gonna do an article on the 10 things I would do to change CML just to improve it, given that they're really in need of just some fresh fun ideas. If I was in charge, the guy I would bring in to be the third Infernal would be Soberano Jr., just because I think that would actually keep him there. I think it would be fun, him teaming up with his dad, Euphoria, and also he would finally, like, and I'm not saying do Relevos Increíbles, I'm saying turn him heel and have him be like against, all the welterweights, because he's a welterweight. He could, him against Volador Jr., Titan, Caristico, Mystico. There's so many more, Atlantis Jr. There's so many more guys you could work against if you switch him to the other side, as opposed to him being still technical and then, wrestling, Carbonario, Nero Casas over and over again. Mephisto. I mean, those guys, don't get me wrong, they're good, and he's been able to have good matches with them, but there's only so much. But I think that would be kind of a fun thing to have him be like the third member, but only make him a full-on heel, especially after what he said about Ultimo Guerrero. I think that would be kind of fun. That would be a fun, and then eventually you could lead to you have those three work with against technicals, then little by little you start planting the seed to eventually have them feud with the Guerreros Laguneros, because then you would have a fun rivalry, just because you'd have Ultimo Guerrero, Gran Guerrero, who are capable of working with Hechicero and Euphoria, and then you have Soberano Jr. who could work with Templario and have great matches with them. The combination, Soberano Jr. could team up with Euphoria versus the Guerreros. More combination, Templario versus Hechicero. There's way more combinations you could do, and I think that would be a fun thing to do. That'll be on my list of 10 things I would do if I was in charge of CMLL. The other one would be fire half the roster and half the people working backstage. But that'll be in my post when I eventually get to that. I might actually have to start writing it sooner or later, because I think it's going to be like, if I wait too long, it's going to be like a waste of time to have done it. But that's about it for CMLL. The big news also was that this last Friday, they actually had post-match interviews with everyone, with the winning team, with the winners of each of the matches, and I thought that was cool. Hechicero came off as a legitimate Rudo, not like a tweener, so I thought that was great. Dark Silhouette the same. I really dig her as a heel. I think she's gonna be. She's somebody that they should have, like, when she wrestled Zeuxis years ago. That should have been like the starting of her starting to get more of a push, but unfortunately, that at that point in time, they kind of brought in Dallas and all those other like older women, and they kind of like took over. They wouldn't let any of the younger women get an opportunity. Zeuxis hasn't been anywhere. I kind of wish she would have stuck around with CMLL now, or been able to come back. Unfortunately, she should have done what Princess Suhei did, because she's really had a hard, like, she's basically been independent but is nowhere to be found, really. It didn't work out with her in AAA, and independent, she really hasn't done as much. I don't really think, I don't know if there's anyone on the independent scene besides Zeuxis that is really would be a big interest for CMLL to bring in. And honestly, I think they've, oddly enough, some of the women that we used to criticize, that kind of like with Yuvia and Reina Isis, they've kind of improved enough where they're not horrible. They become passable. But some of it's still a very questionable division. They did smart in bringing in Stephanie Vacker and bringing back Silueta and La Magnifica. So they did smart. They made smart decisions on who they were bringing in. But I think other than that, I don't know you necessarily need to bring in more women. You kind of have to let La Guerrera is also pretty decent as well, but you just gotta like I think as they got to get rid of a few of the older women and start pushing some of the younger women as time goes on. But I think for the time being, I wouldn't get too overworked trying to bring in more women. I think what they have right now, the fact that they're able to do the Marcela Amapola kind of Relevos Increíbles dream team, that should be enough for them to do something for the time being, and possibly even turn Marcela Ruda for a while. But I don't really think you need more. I mean, especially when you're watching IWRG and you see some of the how bad some of the women are that have made appearances on those shows. I think they're okay for the time being. Maybe like if there's somebody that might catch your eye, then bring her in. But as far as work, I mean, because it's like, I mean, Sanelli didn't even make it onto that Universal Women's Tournament. That kind of tells you how questionable the women's division has been. I think she didn't make it. I don't think she was on that, because I know when Stephanie Vacker got hurt, they didn't really bring her. They didn't ask her to come in. Vaquerita worked the Friday show, which is surprising because she usually only works Sunday shows because of her work schedule, I think, and she has kids also, so she's not able to do that as much. But I thought that was cool that they did post-match interviews. The trouble with CML is that they give up on that stuff right away, but I think they got to do it. The post-match promos, interviews, I think that's something that a cool element to add to the CMLL shows, especially when they're not really gonna. There's only so much that you could do with just match quality carrying a show, and if you don't have that, you're not really gonna. People aren't gonna be that interested if people aren't talking and building stuff up. And Chisero did a great job of building himself up as like the best wrestler in CMLL, which I would say, I mean, he probably is, and hopefully he gets to show it this time around. So that's about it for this week. Check us out on all podcast platforms. I don't even remember Apple, Stitcher, all the other stuff. I don't even know how many of these still exist. I just bring them up. But we're on the YouTube channel as well, on the Retro Wrestling YouTube channel. Check out the Patreon page, patreon.com/LuchaWorld. There's 3 different tiers. The $1 tier is just like, a little bit of a support, thank you towards you're throwing out to the website. There's a couple of few items podcasts available on the $1 tier. I'll probably add a few other things that as I go along, maybe put in a magazine write-up for $1 in there every so often. But for the most part, if you're a big Lucha Libre fan, the tier you want is the $3 tier, where you get the Lucha Classica podcast. I haven't done one in a while just because I kind of think in all honesty, there's so much research into doing that stuff that I do have to do the Lucha Magazine write-ups and get ahead on that stuff, because it would make it a lot easier to do the Lucha Classica podcast. Also, and at the $5 tier, you're getting every month you get 10 DVD titles available in ISO files. So that format, you just have to unzip them and you get DVDs, and you could burn them. You could do whatever you want. You could turn them into MKV files and watch them on your TVs, monitors, however you want it. Or if you want to burn them, save them for prosperity onto DVD, you could do that as well. And you also get the Lucha Classica podcast, a couple of other podcasts I did for a while, the Retro Wrestling podcast that I did a few of those shows as well. A lot of that stuff involves a lot more work, so like I said, it's gonna be a while before I'm able to do it. Also, the pandemic kind of, a lot has gone on in the last year that has really kind of thrown a wrench into a lot of my projects. Also, the fact that I have 2 websites kind of doesn't help. I have a lot of stuff that I do. I write a lot, basically. You could find more Lucha Libre news and information on LuchaWorld.com, and you could visit my Retro Wrestling Reviews page, which is RetroWrestling.com. Check it out. It's got a lot of reviews. I've been reviewing a lot of Mid-South Wrestling, Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, Memphis Wrestling, Lucha Libre, New Japan Pro Wrestling, All Japan Pro Wrestling, World of Sport, All Japan Women, even some old WWF. I haven't been doing a lot of WWF or WWE stuff because I haven't subscribed to Peacock. I'm waiting to find out that they've actually added everything. Every time somebody posts like an update on it, there's still stuff missing. Hopefully there is now that as I think SummerSlam, the time of this recording, I think SummerSlam has already passed. So hopefully by that point, there will be everything will be available on there, and then I could sign up to it. But for the most part, you can find a lot of it on YouTube. Hell, somebody posted all the IWA, the Eddie Einhorn promotion, where Mil Mascaras was the long reigning champion, posted a lot of those shows. I may actually go through that rabbit hole and watch those and review those, just because I have I just like to do that stuff. Honestly, I just enjoy watching old wrestling. So that's it for this week. We should be back at some point. I know Kurt has been wanting to do a podcast. He might be back at some point as well too. Not sure if he'll be back on a LuchaWorld podcast, but I may have to just create another podcast just to have him on. Maybe revive Slam and Stand, just because he doesn't watch a lot of current wrestling, but he does like to talk about, or maybe just have him on one of the retro wrestling podcasts. I may actually just do something with retro wrestling podcasts and have that on, either put it on Patreon for free for everyone. Because I need a feed, and basically I don't want to put it in with the LuchaWorld podcast, because it doesn't really, it's just going to confuse people to add that to the feed. But maybe if I could put it on the Patreon for free, and then put it also on YouTube, on the YouTube channel, on the Retro Wrestling YouTube channel, it might make sense to do that. So that's one of my ideas that I've been thinking about doing. But for the time being, there's still a lot going on. Hopefully, I would guess the next podcast might be the anniversary, post-anniversary, maybe earlier. I might do something earlier as I go back and watch old wrestling, or actually watch old CML and AAA that from this past couple of months, because there's been a lot of stuff that I haven't watched. So once I watch that, maybe I'll do that podcast. I promise that I'm just talking about what I recommend as far as good matches to watch. I'll probably be doing that next, and then we'll do the anniversary podcast. So that's it for this week. Stay safe, everyone, and talk to you guys again soon.